Everyone. I'm Amay Mittal, a 2021 graduate from IIT Bombay. And more relevant for this video, I'm a Wharton Moelis Fellow, which is a deferred MBA admit to the Wharton School, which is one of the oldest and the most prestigious business schools in the world. And today in this video, I'll be covering a lot about deferred MBAs because a lot of people have been asking me about the processes of the deferred MBA, whether they should apply or not, what does it mean exactly, and so I'll be covering a few topics related to deferred MBAs today. The first topic that I want to cover today is what exactly is a deferred MBA program. A deferred MBA program is a program that allows you to secure admission to a top MBA school in the US or even a few colleges in India beforehand while you are in your final year of your undergraduate degree. And if you're pursuing masters immediately after your undergraduate degree, then you can apply even in the final year of your master's degree. And you secure an admission to an MBA college. You can work for 2 to 5 years and then go on to pursue your MBA. The timeline of these programs is that the deadlines of these applications are typically in the months of March to May in the final year of your undergraduate degrees. So while you're in your final semester, you can apply to these programs and you will have your interviews in the months of May to June. And the results typically come around July to August as the decisions on whether you have gotten into these programs or not. The schools that offer these deferred MBA programs are majorly in the US. So the M7 schools, which is Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, MIT, Kellogg, Booth, and Columbia Business School, all of these schools have their own deferred MBA programs. Apart from these, there are a few other schools that also have deferred MBA programs, such as UC Berkeley Haas and University of Virginia Darden. And apart from that, even in India, the ISB or Indian School of Business offers a YLP program, which is the Young Leaders Program, where you can apply in your pre-final year or your final year as well. So these are the main schools that offer the deferred MBA programs, and you can apply to any of these. How many people get selected from India? So a few people have also asked me about the selectivity of these deferred MBA programs, and I would like to tell you that every year around 15 to 20 people roughly from India have gotten selected. So since these deferred MBA programs are a recent phenomena, these have started only in 2020 or 2021. So the numbers have been increasing on the number of admits from India, but currently they are around 15 to 20 people from India who get selected across different schools. So it's not necessary that one person gets only into one school. So typically 15 to 20 people across different schools that I mentioned previously. The second part of this video is why you should pursue an MBA. And this is a question that I would want you all who are applying for deferred MBA programs to deeply think about. So as to why specifically do you want to pursue an MBA? Is it because your friends or your relatives or someone in your close circle would want you to do? Or is it something that you personally want to do? It is a very important question to answer for your own self because it is a career decision that you are making for your own career. So thinking about this question is very important. And this is something that even the admissions committee of these colleges would need clarity on. So as to why you would want to pursue an MBA at this stage of your career. And this is also especially important because you will be a deferred MBA applicant and you will be competing indirectly with people who have 3 to 4 years of experience and have a lot of clarity so as to why they want to pursue an MBA. So talking to a lot of people, talking to seniors, talking to people who are currently doing their MBAs at these schools might help you get an idea of why you should pursue an MBA. To help you, let me state a few reasons as to why people generally pursue an MBA. One is typically they look to progress in their career, so they reach a standstill and they cannot take up leadership or management positions. And doing an MBA enables them to learn diverse business skills and take up leadership positions, manage people, take up management positions in their own companies. Secondly, a lot of people are looking to pivot their careers. So they have been working, say, in the healthcare domain or in the consulting domain or in the investment banking domain. And they're looking to roles that are typically taken up by post MBA students. So maybe roles like product management or private equity or venture capital roles. And that is why also a lot of people pursue their MBAs. Thirdly, a lot of people want a flavor of different kinds of people around them, people from different backgrounds, people from different diverse thinking around themselves, and that is why also a lot of people pursue their MBAs. Another very common reason for pursuing their MBAs, fourthly, is that a lot of people want a good hike in their careers, a boost in their careers, and an MBA typically enables that as well. So post MBA roles do pay you higher typically as compared to a non MBA role. And a common reason for pursuing an MBA in India or even abroad for people is that the salaries or the compensations after the MBAs are very good. So while you think about this question of why you need an MBA, I would encourage you to think of what you would want to do in the short term or the long term after you pursue the MBA, or even look at certain role models and think of whether you would be able to reach their position or whether you will be able to become them if you didn't do an MBA. If you didn't do an MBA, well, you can save the money. But if in case you feel that you would definitely need an MBA to reach that position, so maybe it's a very high level executive position, or maybe it's a position that requires you to learn a lot about finances or operations, and you don't have any background in that. So maybe you do realize that you need an MBA. So I would want you to think deeply about this question, so as to why you would need the MBA, and be true to yourself while you're before you start applying. The next part that I want to cover in this video is why a foreign MBA as compared to an Indian MBA, right? So this is also a question that I get typically from a lot of students as to why are you pursuing an MBA from a foreign college, from Wharton Business School instead of the IIMs or the ISB, and is it a good option or not? So I would want to answer this questions. I would want to answer why a foreign MBA might be a better option. Of course, an Indian MBA also has its pros, but right now in this video, I will be talking about why a foreign MBA is sensible and what are the pros of a foreign MBA. The first point is that the academic experience of a foreign MBA is very different. So they are a lot more case study based in their approach. Their teaching styles are very different. Their teaching styles are very practical. A lot of people find this very suitable. A lot of people do like the theoretical approach, but typically foreign MBAs are very practical in their approaches. When you might be visiting a supply chain model in China, or you might be visiting a cocoa plant in Brazil, and you'll be learning from the best places in the world for those practices. The second point is that in these foreign MBAs, you typically learn or you have a global community around yourself, and you're learning from people from various different backgrounds, various different ethnicities, various different professional backgrounds. And so the learning that you can gain or the mindsets or the different approaches to problems that you get would be very unique at these programs. The third point is also that you can target global roles after pursuing global degrees of foreign MBAs. Well, you might pursue an Indian MBA and you might be aiming for becoming an Indian CEO or maybe an executive position within India. But these programs might also enable you to target bigger regions or become heads or presidents of bigger regions, such as the Samina region or the ASEAN region or maybe the entirety of Europe or the North American region. So this widens your horizon quite a bit. The next advantage of doing a foreign MBA is that it allows you to settle outside. So if you are doing a degree or an MBA from the US and your plan is to settle in the US, then it is a good enabler for you to plan and settle in the US to secure a job over there, which might be difficult from an Indian perspective without a foreign MBA. And you can secure jobs over there, and maybe if you want, you can settle down over there as well. Or maybe you can settle down in another country other than India as well, if that is what your goal is. Lastly, with all these advantages being talked about, the funding options for these MBAs are also becoming friendlier, and the banks are realizing that education loans are something that are becoming popular. There are friendly education loan options. So there are typically 3 to 4 options in which you can fund these MBAs, because mind you, uh, behind all the benefits of these programs is a huge cost or upfront cost that you're paying to secure this degree, which is roughly to the tune of 150 to 200,000 US dollars. And in Indian rupees, it roughly translates to 1.5 crores to 2 crores, including every expense, including your living expenses as well, in this current date. So, as banks become friendlier in funding these programs, and there are institutes such as Prodigy Finance or Empower that are funding your education even without collaterals, it becomes a good option that you can consider, with a payback period of typically 3 to 4 years, with moderate savings. The next part that I want to cover in this video is why a deferred MBA. And before you ask this question to yourself, the first two questions that you should ask are the ones that I asked, which is why an MBA and why a foreign MBA. Right? Once you have the answers, yes and yes to both of them, that you want to pursue an MBA and that you want to pursue a foreign MBA, the next question is why a deferred MBA. And a deferred MBA has its advantages in the sense that you get the deferral period in order to explore different roles, explore different jobs, and maybe even have your own startup or your initiative for a period of 2 to 3 years and take risks, right? And not be focused on building a cookie cutter profile that gets you into these programs in historically, right? So that is an advantage of applying to a deferred MBA program. And how I had thought about whether I should be applying to the deferred MBA program or not is that I felt that I was more differentiated while applying to the deferred MBA programs as compared to 3 to 4 years down the line, when I would be maybe in a tier two firm or maybe not sure about where my career was headed. But if you're at a firm or if you're at a very good place, if you're placed at a very good place, and you feel that you will have a lot of support, a lot of seniors who can guide you, and maybe a good experience of projects of good job profile, then maybe applying later on to these programs after you have the average years of experience, maybe that makes more sense as compared to a deferred MBA program. But definitely, if you feel that your college experiences was very unique, was very differentiated, and that you'll be able to stand out more now as compared to 3 to 4 years later, then definitely it is a no loss option. You can go for it and you can apply. And even if you don't make the cut, you can apply 3 to 4 years later. I am not sure if they ask you whether you have applied via the deferred MBA route to these schools or not. But even if they do, you can say that yes, I had applied, but I have developed over time. You can show them what has developed in you over the years, and then reapply to these programs. Another advantage of applying to deferred MBA programs is that the application fees is typically lower as compared to the normal MBA applications, although that is a very marginal expense as compared to the entire fees of the program. But that is also a point that you can consider while you're applying to deferred MBA programs. The next part that I want to cover in this video is what do they look for in the deferred applicants. Typically, these schools in the deferred applications would divide you or your profile into three buckets. One is academics, the second bucket being professional experience, and the third bucket being your extracurricular activities. Now, this is very different from the Indian MBA process, where a lot of focus would be on the CAT exam or the entrance exam for these schools, and a lot of weightage would be given to that. Here, they look at a more holistic view of your profile, a lot of different aspects before they make a decision about you. The first bucket, which is the academic bucket, is to see whether or not you will be able to handle the rigor of the MBA and everything that is at the intersection of academics and management comes within this bucket. So your GMAT score or your GRE score, your undergraduate institution, your GPA in the undergraduate institution, any relevant coursework that you've done. Maybe you've taken up courses related to management or finance or accounting, etc. Maybe you've given the CFA exam, maybe you've given the CPA exam. Whatever is relevant, anything that is at the intersection of academics and management would come over here. The second bucket, which is the professional experience bucket, is to see whether you would be a good person and an employable person in the United States or in whichever geography you are going, and whether companies would want to hire you or not down the line. For this bucket, generally your internships and your volunteering experiences, maybe your post-graduation placement offers, any startups that you've had, any professional certifications that you've had, your letters of recommendation, everything adds up within this bucket and would become your professional experience bucket. The third bucket is the extracurricular activities. And let me restate this point as I've stated to many students that you don't necessarily need to do social work in order to get into these schools. You don't need to necessarily be a volunteer. If you are, and if you have done social work or volunteering, it's well and good. Please do mention it. But if you haven't, then please don't do it with the view of applying to these schools or applying to these programs and standing out. You can literally be doing any extracurricular activity. You can be playing cricket, you can be playing music, you can be a coin collector, you can be learning different languages, anything that you do other than academics and other than work qualifies as extracurricular activities. The only point that you need to keep in mind is that throughout these three buckets, what is more important is that what kind of experience you've had over the years in all of these three. The first bucket, academic experience, is how I mentioned that it checks whether you'll be able to handle the rigor of the MBA. The second bucket is to see whether you're an employable person or not. The third bucket, which is the extracurricular activities bucket, is to see whether you're an interesting person to talk to, whether your classmate will be sitting next to you, would want to talk to you or not when you're in the class, right? So, with all this said and done, more importantly than certifications or proof that you have carried out these activities, the more important part is that you should be able to show your learnings from these experiences. So maybe you've done a social startup, or maybe you've started an initiative, or maybe you've done something amazing at work. The more important thing is what you've learned from these experiences. So it's not necessary that you've done a photography course that you know what ISO is, maybe what exposure is, what is different levels of how to take photography, etc. That all is not that important. They're not going to check your knowledge as such, but the more important part is what you've learned from that experience, right? Maybe being a photographer, maybe being a wildlife photographer has made you more patient. Maybe you stay for long hours in the same position trying to capture birds and animals, and maybe that has made you more patient. Maybe that has made you to respect nature more, right? So those kinds of things that you pick up from the extracurricular activities, from your professional experiences, from your academic experiences, would really help in articulating who you are as a person. Another important aspect, a blanket aspect that covers all of these buckets, is that if you can show some strong leadership experiences, that would be really good. Because these schools typically look to groom leaders, look to make the future leaders, and if you can show leadership experiences, that would be a great thing. It is not necessary that you have good positions of responsibilities, or maybe you are the president or the head of finance or head of marketing of your clubs, etc. It is not necessary that you are all those things. But even if you were in a group project, maybe if you were in as a part of your team during an internship or any other experience, maybe you took leadership, maybe you took lead in a situation where you didn't have to lead, maybe you taught people how to work, maybe you motivated people to work when they weren't working, maybe you led negotiations with the deans or the directors of your college. And all these kinds of experiences would add up to a strong leadership experience. And I would want you to reflect and mention these in the part as a part of the application, because this is something that they would like a lot as well. Now coming to the last part of this video, which is how to apply and what all is needed. The schools that I mentioned initially in the beginning have their own application portals for the deferred MBA programs, where you can learn about these programs and apply to these programs. And you can access these websites, even sign up for sessions of these schools, even send connections to the alumni of these schools or the current students of these schools, and learn more about the application process. You can also ask any questions that you might have regarding the curriculum, regarding any activities that might be relevant to your profile or your goals post the MBA. What all is part of the application? So, as a part of the application, let me mention the things that you would have to prepare by the time next April or next May approaches, or whenever your deadline is, whenever that year approaches. So, you would need a GMAT or a GRE score. Uh, a tip that I would have for this is that make sure that your score is around the average score or even slightly higher if you, I mean, that would be to your benefit. And this typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks of preparation if you don't have a lot of things on your plate. But if you have, maybe if you are a working full-time professional, then maybe it would take a longer time and you would be able to dedicate lesser amount of time. But if you're a college student and maybe you're doing this between the semesters during your gap, or maybe during a time when you are not so loaded with exams, maybe you will take typically 4 to 6 weeks, or maybe even 6 to 8 weeks. Apart from the GMAT or GRE score, you would need two letters of recommendation. It is recommended that the two letters of recommendation, one of them can be from academic source, one of them can be from a professional source. This is recommended. I had applied with two letters from professional sources from two internships that I had done, but feel free to apply with an academic and a professional letter of recommendation. One academic one can talk about your academic strengths and can add up to your academic bucket, and maybe even talk about your time management skills in college if you've held some different positions and your advisor is someone who is the head of that club. And the professional letter of recommendation can talk about other skills such as your maturity at work, or how you stepped up at different times, how you responded to their feedback during the internship, etc. The third part is that you would be needing to prepare a resume, and the resume would be typically different from the resume that you might be building in India for colleges. It is an MBA resume, and you can Google that. You can even search online as to how these MBAs typically look. They typically have an education section at the top, then the experience section, and then some additional information. So you can follow that sort of a format. So the reformatting will typically take you about a week. The next part, which is the most important part of the application, is the essays. And the essays take about 2 months to draft. As in, if you're working on one or two school applications simultaneously, then it would take you about 1.5 to 2 months. And why I say this is because you would be writing a draft, maybe giving it to someone for a review, maybe your senior, or maybe if a consultant that you hire, and you'd be typically getting back these part of the application, this essays within 2 to 3 days. You'd be taking a further 2 to 3 days to work on the comments, and then this cycle takes about 5 days. And for my applications, I had submitted essays that were V10 and V11, version 10 and 11. So it typically took me around 45 to 50 days to prepare these essays. A tip to write for the essay is that you can think of the essay as an equation. So typically the essays will cover two questions, that is, why the school, why do you want to pursue an MBA at that particular school, and why you, as to why should they have you in their classroom. These are the typically the two questions that are covered. Now, the why school part, or why the MBA makes sense, you can think of that question as being an equation. So your background, which is your experience, your internship experience, and your professional experience, plus your education, plus your deferred MBA, deferred period experience, plus the things that you learn at your MBA will all add up, should all typically add up to your short-term goal post the MBA. So maybe your background and your experience and your deferral period experience teaches you some things, but there are a few more things that you need to reach the short-term MBA goal, short-term goal post your MBA, and those are the gaps that you identify and that you say that your MBA will fulfill in order to make you reach those short-term goal, and maybe even the post short-term goal, which is your long-term goal, a 10 to 15 year horizon post the MBA. The next part that you would need after the essays would be your college transcript. So you can figure out the process for your own college, how you can get the transcript. Typically, when you're applying, your final semester grades won't be available. and you'll be applying with the pre-final semester grades, and that is perfectly fine. Another part of the application is also your TOEFL or your IELTS score. This typically varies from school to school. A few schools are very adamant on requiring these as a part of the application. A lot of the schools waive the requirement because your transcript mentions that your degree was in English. So if that is the case, if your transcript mentions that the language of instruction at the college or the school was English, or if you can get a letter from the dean or the director stating, I mean, I'm not sure, but from the academic office at your college stating that your degree or language of instruction was English, then that should be sufficient for a lot of schools as well. The last part, after all these different parts of the application, is that you would be required to fill additional information that could be personal information, such as where you are a resident of, what is your past experience, what are your previous internships, what kinds of clubs at the college you are interested in, etc. Different achievements that you've had, professional achievements, academic achievements, etc. A lot of it would be derived from the resume. A lot of it might be outside the resume as well. But this typically takes about a week to write, and I wouldn't stress a lot about it because these are things that are already done and dusted. Now that I've come to the end of my super long video, I'm sorry if you were bored throughout the process, but I typically felt that I should record this because a lot of people have been asking me these questions, and I will be going to pursue my MBA from the Wharton School, and I don't think I'll be able to dedicate a lot of time then to a lot of people who would be applicants. That is why I decided to record this video. And a small request from my side is that I would encourage you all to ask as many questions as possible regarding the deferred MBA process or the application in the comments itself. Maybe you can use an anonymous